President Cavalluna, you ready?
Yes, sir.
Secretary Lane, you ready? Okay, we'll go ahead and get started right on time. Okay, good evening and welcome to the Henry Ford College Regular Board of Trustees meeting. Today is November 16th, 2020. We are starting this meeting right on time. We got the technology down to where it's supposed to be now. This is a virtual meeting. It's a Zoom meeting. It's Zoom number 961-6032-5538. I will call this meeting to order. Madam Secretary, can we have a roll call, please?
Mary Lane is present in Dearborn, Michigan. Roxanne McDonald,
Here in Dearborn.
Down a little.
Michael Mead,
Present in Dearborn.
Adil Moseb,
Present in Dearborn, Michigan.
Mary Petchlikoff,
Here in Dearborn.
James Thorpe,
Here in Dearborn.
Chair Hussein Berry.
Here in Dearborn, Michigan. Thank you. Next item, Madam Secretary.
Approval of minutes of the Henry Ford College Regular Board of Trustees, regular meeting and audit committee meeting on October 19th, 2020. Make any necessary corrections and move to approve these minutes.
So moved.
Some support.
We have a motion moved by trustee Dr. Mead, supported by trustee McDonald. Are there any corrections? Hearing none and seeing none. Madam Secretary, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Lane, yes. McDonald,
Yes.
Mead,
Yes.
Moseb,
Yes.
Petchlikoff,
Yes.
Thorpe,
Yes.
Berry.
Yes, thank you. Motion carries. Next item, please.
President's items.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Good afternoon and evening, trustees. It's good to see you again. I have a few items for you here that are updates on ongoing items, and then I have a few items that are new items. The first thing I will do is reiterate something that my esteemed colleague and friend, Dr. Glenn Maleko, mentioned at the meeting that you all had with him last week. And so, of course, this will be a repeat for what you all heard, but for the audience that may not have been at your meeting last week, I will give an update on the election as it relates to the Board of Trustees. Of course, Dr. Maleko and I enjoyed meeting all of the candidates who were interested in meeting with our administrations, myself and Dr. Maleko and our executive teams, of course, via distance modality. And we watched as the election results took place a little bit less than 2 weeks ago. And you all know that there was a seat on your board for a 2-year term. And there were 3 seats that were there for 6-year terms. And I congratulate all of the individuals who are constituents and citizens and probably voters in Dearborn and our district, because the turnout was high, and I believe that an election success is rated by how many active participants in our democracy we have. And I congratulate the community, and candidly, it's particularly worthy of noting that that type of turnout occurred during a pandemic. I also congratulate any of the individuals and all the individuals, both those who did win election and those who did not, for the civic duty of putting one's name up for public discussion and up for public approval to do that. I enjoyed my interactions with the candidates when they did meet with our teams, and I felt confident that each of them would have brought important and valuable passion and knowledge about education. And I tell all of those candidates who did run, you have my respect and admiration for running for public office. Of course, any election results in a winner. And as I mentioned, there were 4 seats on your board that were being competed for, and if that's a verb. And one of them is the winner of a 2-year term, and that's Pat D'Ambrosio. I've talked with trustee-elect D'Ambrosio a couple times on the telephone and congratulated him on behalf of the college. Dr. Maleko and I also crafted a formal statement from the board to the community, which was circulated at the end of last week, congratulating all the victors, including Mr. D'Ambrosio. And he, of course, will take his seat on this board as soon as the election results are certified. I don't know if that's happened or not, but once that does happen, of course, Mr. D'Ambrosio would then take an oath of office, usually conducted at Dr. Maleko's office, and then he would take his office right away because of the seat for 2 years remaining is effective immediately. The other 3 seats, of course, take office when, like the previously mentioned seat, the election is certified and the candidate with the most votes in the top 3 takes the oath of office. That would occur in January. And as unofficial results have now been reported by the clerk's office in the city of Dearborn, it showed that the 3 individuals who had the most votes at the unofficial stage were Adel Mosip, who of course is trustee Adel Mosip, and Irene Watts, and Mary Petlichkoff, who is of course trustee Mary Petlichkoff. So as Dr. Maleko did, I echo his sentiments for all of those individuals, but particularly those 4 who have won election. I congratulate you and thank you for your willingness to serve, and I look forward to working with you, of course, Trustee Mosip, and you, of course, Trustee Petlichkoff, in a continuing relationship with the college. And of course, Trustee-elect D'Ambrosio and Trustee-elect Watts, I look forward to meeting with you and getting you up to speed in our college and the great work that we do here. And I've already, just speaking directly to you 2 members, I've already had discussions with our current chair and our current vice chair about ways that we can make your transition onto the board as effective as possible despite the pandemic. So moving on to some other good news. You likely were not a graduate, trustees of Henry Ford College, in the pandemic. I feel pretty confident none of you graduated, but had you graduated, you would have received a box in the mail recently that would have been congratulating you as being a member of the class of 2020. And it said a special gift for you. Now, I really wanted to see what happened with this project. And candidly, I'm a little bit desirous of being a graduate of Henry Ford College. So this actually came to my house and it did arrive here. And it has several things, including a congratulations from me and a statement congratulating members of our class that had, as you all know, a very different experience in the process of graduating from college. And it also gives them one of the most important things that one can have, and that is a Henry Ford College Alumni Association pin that I hope they all wear everywhere all the time, even when they're wearing t-shirts and shorts. Anytime, I hope to see those. And as I mentioned to you all trustees, if you all happen to sneak through and graduate this last term and we missed you, please let me know. We now transition from happy news to a little bit more concerning news, and it's news that is not news to you all trustees, but it's news that I want our community who tunes in and pays attention to these board meetings to be aware of, and that is that the enrollment question for our college, being more than 50% of our revenue, is important. It's always been important since I've been your president. I've talked about it at length. And we were making real progress on that in the first 2 years of my tenure here. But the pandemic has had its effect, and I need to share a little bit of information with all the citizens and teammates of mine who attend these meetings. And it is that enrollment, and we gauge enrollment generally by credit hours. Enrollment is evaluated by looking back 1 year. And so you'll always hear me say, well, we're up or we're down, and that'll relate to where we were at this point last year. And we track that pretty closely for reasons that I've mentioned many times. In fact, so much my colleagues probably hear me say this in their sleep. In fact, sometimes I hope that they do actually hear me say this because it is pivotal to our existence. But enrollment, it was budgeted to be down 5.5%. And of course, the board approved that budget estimate, really with no idea how we do, because the pandemic took all of our basic assumptions about enrollment and put them to the test. In the first term of this fiscal year, first major term of this fiscal year, we did better than we expected. We were not down as far as 5.5%. But as we approach the winter term, which historically has been our term with the highest amount of credit hours, we are significantly lower than we were at this point last year, preparing to go into the winter of that year. And I wanted to share with you some details about that so that everyone is eyes wide open. Again, trustees, this is information I've shared with you, and candidly, the information is being shared quite broadly across our campus. But for those that you haven't seen it, right now for credit hours, we are, if you look back at last year at this time, our credit hours are down 21.7%. That's a big drop, one fifth of a decrease. And I take it very seriously. And in a minute, I'll talk to you about what we're trying to do to evaluate that problem. But before I talk about that, I want to say one of the things I'm interested in is this something that where Henry Ford College is suffering from some difficulty that other colleges are not? And so one of the ways to evaluate that is to look at a voluntary reporting system that colleges across our state are allowed to and permitted to give their information throughout the enrollment period. And we, despite whether we're happy or unhappy about the current status, we do report because we find the benefit of sharing our numbers with other colleges. While not all other colleges do, I do have some information for about 2/3 of the colleges have reported up to the last week. And we bear a resemblance to colleges that have over 9,000 students. There are really about 6 of us community colleges in Michigan that have over 9,000 students in a term. And of those colleges that have that type of size, Grand Rapids is included, and they report being down 25.2%. Another college that is in the same type of size range is Lansing. They report being down 27.3%. Another college that is candidly the largest college, if you go by head count, is Macomb Community College, and they are down 25%. Another large college is Oakland Community College, and they are down 23%. And Schoolcraft, as you all know, is a very comparable college in its size, down 21.7%. Also looking at some colleges that are a little bit smaller than us as far as head count, but not small colleges that have in the range of 5,000 to 9,000 students would include Delta Community College. They're down 31.9%. Muskegon down 14.7%, and Northwestern Michigan College up in Traverse City down 16.7%. Now, the reason I point those numbers to you, and I don't often do those comparisons because thankfully many times we've been doing better than other colleges, and I don't do this to gloat, which is why I don't often show these numbers, but we're down this time, and I need to make a public statement about how important this is. But I also wanted to show you that there's clearly something happening across the state of Michigan on enrollment at community colleges. Those areas I just referenced to you, I know the leaders of those institutions. I know their geography, and I just named colleges all across our state, from the upper part of our Lower Peninsula to the southwest corner of our state, and they all seem to be struggling with enrollment like we are. So what is the problem? If it seems to be affecting all of us in this institution, in this community college realm, what is the problem? That is a question that we're working on right now. In fact, the SEM team is a team that we stood up a little bit more than a year and a half ago, and it's a team that has some of our best and brightest on it that frankly are the ones we need to thank for our enrollment gains in the first couple of years of my time here. But it's also the team that's now in the process of diagnosing what is the cause of our enrollment decline. And right on the heels of that diagnosis that will be made just this week will be a quick pivot to what can we do to lessen the decrease. And so I'll be reporting back out to the Board of Trustees still this week about what we've diagnosed as the potential problem here and what we can do to potentially change the trajectory here. But let's be clear, 20% down on enrollment has significant impact on our budget. And the next step, trustees, will be to get into January, where every year we do a mid-year adjustment to our budget. And that's past the time where we'll have a final number for our enrollment in the winter. And I'm concerned that we will have significantly less enrollment and significantly less revenue. Now, I've talked to some employee groups and I've said this college has been run at a pretty lean pace, at least for the last 2.5 years. In fact, it's been, and some of the vice presidents will tell you, sometimes really hard to get vacancies filled and to get investments in departments. And that has served us well for problems like this, where our budgets have been have been tight, and we have been able to build a little bit of reserve to do two important things. One, continue to invest in the infrastructure of our college, and two, hopefully be able to absorb fluctuations in enrollment like this, that I hope is truly an anomaly associated with a hopefully once in a century and once in a lifetime event. The jury's still out on what really is this cause, but I want you to know that the board, I want to talk to you, my colleagues and teammates. The board has followed us into some pretty tough budget time in the past, and it's helped us build a little bit of a nest egg now to survive at least one down term. I'll break right there, Mr. Chairman, because I know enrollment is so important to so many trustees, and ask, are there any questions on enrollment? And then I'll continue with what I expect to be just another 3 or 5 minutes of comments after that.
Trustee Lane?
I assume with enrollment down that at a certain date, you're going to try to consolidate sections of classes, or maybe you're already looking at where enrollment is down. Is it scattershot or is it in specific areas? I don't know, and no one will know how to deal with it until we know more about the nature of the problem. So is there any kind of leading indicators that can guide us?
Well, I would break the answer to your question into 2 parts, Trustee Lane. The first part is, how strategic are we in offering sections? And I will credit Dr. Nealon and his team of administrators, and frankly, the faculty that support them in strategic course section processing that's existed since before I was here. In fact, they're pretty strict about letting courses go with a very low number of students in them. There have to be some pretty rare circumstances for courses to go in sections that are filled minimally. And each year we try to balance that by being nimble and allowing new sections to be added when a sufficient wait list occurs, but not allowing a new section to run just to service a small amount of students. And that is a needle for which Dr. Nealon has threaded very effectively with the help of SEM. And that is one of the reasons that the SEM team has shown really good results in the last 2 years. But the second part of the answer to your question, Trustee Lane, I don't have an answer to, but we're working on now. And that is, okay, what is this really? Is it a bunch of sections that are half full that we haven't consolidated? Is it a certain number of students who fit a certain demographic, who ordinarily enroll are not enrolling now? Is it a certain type of student and a group of students who were enrolled in previous terms and have elected not to continue to enroll? I don't have an answer for that now, but those are some of the questions that we're trying to diagnose. And when we do have more thoughtful answers on it, we'll report them out.
Not just students. I mean, I'm thinking about programs. Culinary has been shut down, and there's a couple others. Theater, maybe some of them have gone online. I don't know about PE or. So I'm sure that analysis is being done as well. Do you know anything program-wise, or is it just too early to tell anything at this point? We're really early into registration, I guess, but.
Well, it is early. It's not too early to have no information. But I don't have the information now because I gave the team a short window to get back to me this week. So we will have some preliminary information about whether there are programs that are particularly struggling. The phrase that Dr. Nealon uses that I couldn't get out from under my teeth there just a minute ago was strategic section management. And he's explained it to me in detail, and I'm completely confident that process is ongoing now. But I will also add to that response, Trustee Lane, that Dr. Nealon and his Academic Affairs Leadership Council have gone through an exhaustive process evaluating where we would be hiring faculty this past several months that would be starting, these faculty would be starting in the winter. And we actually did a couple hires as we prepared for the fall. And so the program analysis that you're asking about has continued to go on. And if you're interested in that, the minutia associated with those decisions is ongoing, and I've seen it, and I'm happy to have Dr. Nealon present it to any trustee who's interested in it. But the details about why we're down now, whether it's demographics of certain types of students or whether it's programs, is obtainable. I don't have it on my fingertips right now, but we're seeking it.
Trustee Moser?
Yes, so obviously we don't have any historical reference to go by to explain why, because obviously we're in a pandemic. But we had the fall semester, and we kind of see the trend of students probably making last minute decisions. Are we looking at that as well, President Cavalluna, to see for the fall semester how enrollment kind of rose up towards the end of or towards the beginning of the semester?
Yes, and so that you know, the poor folks on the SEM team, particularly Holly Diamond, sends me emails every morning outlining the enrollment picture as it was compared to a year ago. So I can tell you just by memory, because I watch it every enrollment period like a hawk. And we've now expanded that email to go out to an even broader group of people. And the enrollment, as it looked back compared to the previous fall, was never in this kind of negative dip. It was never in the 20s. In fact, during my tenure here, we've never been that low. The least, the worst I ever remember was maybe 12% in a couple terms back. Now we finished about 3.4% off, and we were getting closer every day, which is kind of what I suspect you're remembering, Trustee Moser. But the depths of our how far we were behind, I don't recall it ever being even more than like 8 or 9%, and it was catching up day by day. This current situation has kind of hung steady in the 20s for at least a week now. Now there are some segments that the SEM team has identified as groups of students who probably are holding out to enroll a little later than they ordinarily would. But I don't estimate those groups to be able to make up a 20% difference.
Deficit, right.
If I had to tell you what I thought right now, there's clearly an anomaly in the system, and it's across the entire state. I mean, I have conjecture about that, but at this point, it's not based in data. And I will give the board my final analysis of this. I won't do it now without a little more data to support it.
Is it just across the state or is it across the country?
The country is actually reporting the same thing. In the fall, the country was much more off than we were as a state and certainly as a college. But I have to be candid. I have not read other states and regions to see if they're in the 20s like we are.
Do you know if universities are running into this also?
You know, I don't have that data at the tips of my fingers. I can ask the staff if they're part of the same similar voluntary reporting structure. But one of the things that we are evaluating is whether and if in the last several weeks of our enrollment period, we should reach out to any type of students who are disaffected by any type of higher ed institution.
Any other questions? Mr. McDonald?
Are dual enrollment students and other students that fit into those types of categories, are we also significantly down in that area?
Yeah, we are in the
I'm sorry, you're breaking up. I can't hear you.
We were in the fall and we are in the winter. However, we were always in the fall, we were off on dual enrollment more than the everybody else category.
Okay.
That's flipped right now in the winter. We are off more in dual enrollment than we are in the every other category. So the every other category is down by more than 22%. And the dual enrollment is down by somewhere in the high teens. But it seems to me that whatever's affecting both of those populations, whatever's affecting those populations seems to be the same thing because they're both high. You know, just in the 20% down is an anomaly.
Definitely.
All right, so I just sent an email around to all the employees of the college outlining what we're doing right now as a result of the governor's announcement yesterday evening at 6 o'clock. And you will see that email, trustees, and colleagues and teammates who are on this call, please check your email on that from me. It essentially says that we understand the governor's order. We're ready to comply with it at the very beginning of the day, i.e. 12:01 a.m. on Wednesday. And we will be adjusting our response to that order in concert with our return to campus plan. And the real trick is going to be, how do we handle these 10% of courses we do face-to-face to get them through the remaining 5 to 6 weeks of the term? And we're in the process of figuring that out, and we have some innovative ideas about how to do that. And we're also going to try to continue to be focused like we were last winter when we had to make this pivot in, frankly, a tighter time frame. We're going to try to remain focused on helping students still get an education and get what they want out of the education, which is credentials and credits if they've done the learning. And so we right now we're leaning directly on individual instructors and their associate dean and dean to craft plans to teach out that way. Now, the good news is the vast majority of our courses aren't affected by this because they're being taught remotely already. And the even better news is that this college, through its faculty and its deans and associate deans, have proven that they're up to the task. They've proven that they care about students so much that they're willing to do things in unique and sometimes terrifyingly new ways. And I have nothing but complete confidence that we'll be able to weather this 3-week change. The real question will be, and I talked to Dr. Nealon about this today, and I wish I could have told him with some more certainty, an answer to his question, which was, Russ, what do you think happens in 3 weeks? What are we do we get to come back and maybe clean up some of the things we missed? And I had to tell him, unfortunately, I don't have a good sense of that. And I'd like for you to plan, and he's asking the faculty to plan for the potential that we not be able to come back. But we hope that we might be able to. I did see, Trustee Lane, you had your hand there. Did you have a question about this issue from last night?
Yes, I can picture it in my mind. You say that 10% of the classes are in person. So I'm trying to understand, that's 10% of the total of all of the classes at the college are being held in person, but it's probably not full enrollment in person in any individual class, correct?
That's right. And when I walk around, go ahead.
Classroom with 25 people in it, right?
That's right.
So what does that look like? So I see a classroom and it's got maybe 5 people in it, and the rest of the people are is it a synchronous live without the drive? They're synchronously listening? Is that what's going on?
So now bear in mind, these are all courses that could not otherwise have been taught online. So you've got courses that they've been, because of the curricula that they're involved in, they are unique. And I'm sorry?
These are labs or
yes.
like something?
Yes. And so when I've walked around the campus this term and walked into those classes, I'll tell you what I see, Trustee Lane. I see a classroom that is either very closely associated with the lab or co-located with the lab. And there's 35 or 40, there's areas for 35 or 40 chairs, but there's not that many chairs there. And the room is at, I'd say 15 to 20% capacity. And you've got students sitting more than 6 feet away from each other or up and moving around the lab. They all have masks on, and the instructor has a mask on, is standing at the front of the room. And then I have to tell them if they get a chocolate, they can't take their mask off until they leave the campus. But that's what you see there. So, and this is another reason that I think we may see why we have some decreased enrollment, is because those courses, just by the fact of social distancing, have reduced the capacity for which we can deliver them. It's just like flying airplanes. If you take a bunch of seats and X them off, you're not going to have as many revenue carrying passengers. So that's what your mind's eye should see if you were to walk around, well, last week and the weeks before that in this fall term.
One thing that's been a disturbing trend in a lot of our buildings, I talked to Kathy today about coming in because I had no internet. So I said, can I just sit in the Rosenau boardroom with the window open? And she said, no, those windows don't open. And as everybody thinks about our buildings, I mean, if we have an elementary classroom, we can probably open those windows. But at Tenike, in the gym, for example, where we hold our board meetings, all of the perimeter windows up above have all been blocked off. And we've done that with lots of windows. We did it in the, in the 70s or 80s when we tried to reduce heating costs at the college. I just wonder how much is ventilation able to be manipulated for safety?
I feel confident that our return to campus plan gives us the appropriate amount of ventilation, the appropriate amount of filters, and that this is an issue that Trustee Lane, you have raised several times, and I understand your concern about this. I feel very confident that the return to campus plan is meeting my OSHA and OSHA requirements on this, and doing so like all other institutions who, and I don't mean just colleges, I mean any institution that has people in it doing something in proximity to other people. I do feel confident that the system is working, and we've had staff ask about it, and I feel good about that. Okay, the two more items. You all have heard, and I've expressed to the campus on many occasions that we're working on a campus climate survey. This comes out of the analysis that many students and employees raised concerns about racial justice in our society and also on our campus that began months ago. And I've told the board and the public that we are working with a consultant to develop a survey where employees and as one segment and students as another segment would have the opportunity to give feedback about their beliefs about campus climate on things beyond just race, but of course including race and our diversity and our equity and our inclusion from many different ways that people identify and experience the world. My plan was to get that rolled out right about now or towards the end of November. But I have to tell you, I've been meeting with stakeholders in these groups. In fact, some of them in multiple meetings, and Reginald Best has been working with me on this. And the feedback has been thorough, and I have to just say pages long, but it's been great and it's been useful, and it's helping me, and it's also helping Reginald get a better idea of what this type of survey should mean for us as a campus. And it's methodical in what these questions should be. And of course, all of you trustees saw these questions. And so we're still updating that. And I have to say that the amount of updating and editing that we're doing makes me start to consider whether we're going to do this survey in early December or even possibly in the new year, right around the time when we would have a State of the College address. So please know that you haven't seen that survey come out yet. And it's not because work is not being done. In fact, it's the opposite, because so much work is being done that this survey will be a crafted project for the actual campus that we are all virtually a part of now and eventually will be come back to. The last thing I'll say to you all is a list of individuals who you saw who are retiring from the college, and they're in your board documents, and I just wanted to congratulate them and say their names. This is something that I have a lot of pleasure in doing in person, but this is, as so many other things are today, how we have to do things now. And I just want to go down the list. Now, we've done this a couple times with individuals, particularly in our faculty ranks, who have retired this past summer, and here's another batch of them. One of them is William Barber. I know him as Bill Barber. He's got 39 and a half years of service at the college as an instructor in economics, and he will end his service here at the end of this calendar year. Of course, I do recommend you look into this Scholars Act. I did enjoy his book that he published called Capitalism, Socialism, and the Promise of Democracy. It's a well-written book. It's easy to understand, and if you're ever interested in with the wealth disparity in our country and how it comes and what tax policy does, you can learn a lot from that book, and I enjoyed a short interaction I had with Bill as I finished that book. And if I see you, Bill, if you're here, I'll someday get you to sign my copy. Jan Bartos is a nursing instructor, and she has 20 years of service, and she'll end her service in May of 2021. Linda Brandt is a biology instructor for 31 years at our college, and she'll end her service here in May of 2021. And I'm going to keep saying service because that's what these people actually do. They provided an invaluable public service to our community. And it's a real honor for me to say that these decades of service were given here to our community. Linda, of course, she and I have had a lot of connections, but one of my most proud connections with her is planting a tree on this campus with her and several of her colleagues that I showed you all pictures of back when we did have the real blessing of being around each other. And I'm going to miss her work with the Honors College also. The nursing school is also saying goodbye to a colleague, Janice Kai Lawrence, after 22 and a half years of service. She'll end her service in May of 2021. The nursing school will also bid farewell to Lori Grande Swatkowski. After 18 and a half years of service, she will end her service at the end of this calendar year. Diane Green was a counselor and still is a counselor. After 45 and a half years, she'll be going to be with her husband, Saul, who used to do my line of work in my previous life as a U.S. attorney. And so I think he finally litigated his way into having his wife retire after 45 and a half years. And Diane has been a friend and a colleague. I can see Trustee Mead clapping as he remembers working with her also. Charles Jacobs was and continues to be a biology instructor, and after 25 years at the end of this year, he'll end his service. Those of you who remember when I was interviewing to be your president, I showed a picture of a whiteboard on the outside of an instructor's door, explaining how valuable an education is and how it can change one's life. That door and that whiteboard was Charles Jacobs, and I still see his door. It still has statements on it. Bonnie Job was an instructor and still is an instructor until May of 2021 in our Health and Human Services school, and she'll be retiring after 43 years. And I enjoy seeing her and the really large blow-up gift that somehow my child won at a women's recognition luncheon that Bonnie Job sold tickets towards. Dan Kearney, will be retiring in May and ending his service of 22 years as a criminal justice instructor. And of course, Trustee Lang, you asked about our curricula in criminal justice just last board meeting. Of course, it was Mr. Kearney who helped me develop the response that we gave to you all and all the other trustees. Pat Lanzon, in May of 2021, will end 22 years of service in pre-education as an instructor here at the college. And Pat was and continues to be an advocate for students and staff around issues of ADA compliance. She's been a person who I've listened to and was and still is giving feedback on our return to campus climate survey on that front. Gary McElroy, after 35 and a half years of service at the end of this year, will end his career here as an English instructor. He also joined me and Linda planting a tree, and I met his wife that day also, and I know she'll be glad to have him back around more often. As Stuart Vining is a biology instructor, and at the end of this year, he will have 26 years of service, and we wish him well. Maureen Webster, after 31 and a half years of service at the end of this calendar year, will retire as a counselor, and she's actually a pretty good jogger. I remember the 5K race we did on this campus that she ran with us, and I think she beat me pretty easily. And I remember mowing my lawn, it was just 3 or 4 months ago, and I looked up and there was a person smiling at me on a bicycle riding by, and there was Maureen. So I wish you more and happy trails on your bike, Maureen. Karen Wilmering will be retiring after 11 years of service at the end of this year in interior design as an interior design instructor. And of course, those of you who saw when we were bragging about our students who redesigned apartments in the Henry Ford Village, we had a very nice ceremony there. That was a high point, I could tell, with Karen, and I believe she had some family there, and I enjoyed seeing her family kind of beam at her success. Warren Yackel, after 35 and a half years of service, will be retiring at the end of this year, and he is a chemistry instructor. And we've got still one more Yakel on our team, so Laura will continue to be with us. I see you nodding, Dr. Mead. But I'll tell you, folks, that I've just named off over 100 years, maybe more than 200 years of service to people at our college, and these people change lives for a living. And it's my solemn and real joyous way to say goodbye to them, but thank you to them. And I hope to see them back at some point when we actually can see them by face, so we can smile at them and thank them for their service. Mr. Chairman, it's been longer than I usually go, but that is my report.
Thank you very much. But, with all the retirees, definitely need a round of applause, please, from everybody. Thank you for all their service. We'll go on to the next item, Madam Secretary.
Special reports, Integrated Energy Master Plan, IEMP, update, Vice President Sadkowski.
Thank you. This is a long time in coming. I was looking at my computer and I was going back to when we first started talking about this. And believe it or not, it was October 2016, four years ago, when we first got Peter Garforth here and started talking about transforming the college and doing a significant amount of work regarding energy and energy management. Well, 4 years later, the implementation plan is ready to go forward. Contract was signed back in December 2019. The folks with Johnson Control have been diligently working through, and we're slowed down because of the COVID-19, but we're to the point now where design documents are ready to go, materials are being ordered, and the time compression, as you will see in this brief presentation, will give you an idea of where we will be and when things will start being implemented. But we just signed off on the implementation last week. $23.2 million project. As you know, we borrowed $13 million to carry us over some of the initial investment on this. And we have 4 years, hopefully an update of where we've been, where we are headed, and how this is going to change not only the campus, but the region and the area, and look upon this as something that we can be proud of once it's done, and relatively pay itself back over the years of savings associated with this investment. So who I have here, Tim Baker from JCI, who is going to start us off with the process in the report to you tonight. So feel free, as when we get through this, to answer questions, but it's been one of my main goals to get this far, and we're getting there, is where we're at. Tim?
Thank you, John. Yeah, good evening, trustees, President Cavaluna, staff, and guests. It's my pleasure to be here tonight with you and give you this update and report. As John said, we've been putting this program together, well, you have for quite a few years. Over the last year, we've been developing the details of exactly what the implementation plan and program will look like, and that's what I'd like to share with you. Just as a matter of logistics here, John, should I share a screen, or is somebody else?
Kathy, okay. I think you should. I think that last time I talked to Kathy, you were going to share the screen.
Okay. Let me share my screen with you.
Okay.
Can you all see that?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. So yeah, we've been developing the actual implementation agreement and doing full 100% engineering level designs for both the schedule and planning, as well as the technical details. And I have to applaud John and Ruben and the entire team for the diligence and the commitment to this program that's been shown. And I'm very excited to be a partner to Henry Ford College in implementing this plan that was designed with a number of things in mind. And I have to say, you already are a shining example. Even as we develop this quick update for you, what you're about to see is excerpts from a larger presentation that is being held up in front of the World Conference of Energy Engineers as a shining example of what a college can do around a transformational program that meets both efficiency and operational goals as well as sustainability, and has a financial component with a significant ROI. So hats off. When we were selected as a partner, one of the things that we committed to doing was working alongside of you to hold up the example of what can be done in a transformative plan. And so these are the goals that we had set out initially. 60% energy efficiency gain, 40% efficiency on water, more than half of a reduction in the greenhouse gas emissions, all while delivering at least an 8% investment return. When I was with you in December, the contract that we signed up for was such that we would design a program that would meet these goals, and then we would move into the implementation plan. So it's very exciting to be able to report that we indeed have designed a program that meets this goal, and we're moving forward. So I'll share with you a little bit of background of where we've been, just to remind you, and then show you some of the scope items that we're looking forward to seeing implemented on campus. Perhaps the most transformational part of this program for us has been that we're not just doing a project here. The idea of an integrated energy plan was not just to design projects that would save energy, but really to look at the campus as an overall classroom. How do we hold the classroom, the campus, as a living laboratory and an example that we could use to both train students, to inspire the community, and to outreach around continued improvement in enrollment, which, as I heard with President's comments early, is so important in this time specifically. So a big part of this program has been, how do we design something that will be used in these programs, academically and outreach-wise? And we're very excited that that's been held up as a continued value by Ruben and John and Dr. Nealon and team. And we look forward to developing these alongside of Henry Ford College as part of this program. So the overall project within the program is in three main buckets. The first section is, how do we update the facilities to be as energy efficient as possible and do end use efficiency, things like lighting, HVAC, water retrofits. The next piece was a thermal distribution piece where we're following global best practices and in fact are implementing European standards around the most efficient way to distribute heat across the campus. And the third piece is, how do we most efficiently produce that energy? One being a heat and power new energy center that will be a shining example on campus, as well as solar photovoltaics to be a renewable energy. And to do this all through a comprehensive plan, multi-year, a 20-year partnership that has the first couple years as large-scale construction and the remaining years as consulting engagements to continue to make progress towards these aggressive goals that we talked about at the outset. So the innovation that has been displayed all the way from the beginning, back when Peter Garforth developed the metrics that we are going after, up until today, where we're getting ready to kick off, and as John said, ordering materials and getting ready to begin construction, has been astounding, really. So I just wanted to backtrack quickly a couple key things to outline the innovative approach that Henry Ford has taken. So first of all, before we even started looking at being a partner, we've been a long-term provider of controls and instrumentation to the college, and we thank you for that business. But we were looking at, how do we implement something that is as aggressive as this is in the local market? And I remember our first conversations with the college was about, can there be a way to do that with a performance contract expanded partnership that maintains the integrity of a global best practice plan within the context of the local Dearborn market? And so we set about to implement that. And back in December, we signed an innovative development approach, which was a design build contract that gave Johnson Controls and the Henry Ford College staff what we called at the time a flexibility within a framework. So we established the economic criteria and the must-haves within the program, which were the building efficiencies, the district heating, the energy center, the things that we just talked about. And again, perhaps most importantly, in support of a new curriculum and an academic approach. And we built this all around global best practices. And then finally, we developed a project that was in many ways a public-private partnership where Johnson Controls is maintaining a guaranteed level of performance. So anything that we do where we might underperform against the agreed upon targets will be paid back at tariff levels that have been agreed upon. And anything we do that overdrives in partnership with the college will be enjoyed by the college. So we've maintained the position of being a partner that backstops this program so that we deliver on the return on investment and the payback criteria that we set out to from the beginning. What are included in this? So on the demand side approaches, we have a comprehensive upgrade to the technologies across campus for metering and control. We're doing upgraded lighting, both interior and exterior. And in certain select places, we're using things like daylighting, harvesting, occupancy level controls. We're refurbishing and replacing much of the HVAC across campus. Some of the HVAC that is not at the end of a useful life will be incrementally improved over the course of the contract, and the contract maintains provisions for those types of upgrades. And we're doing some select building envelope, new windows, new entrances, sealing up gaps and those types of things as a part of our overall program, again, with a continuous improvement outline of how us and Ruben and his teams will partner together to make those building envelope improvements over time. Water performance, we're doing new low flow toilets, shower heads, faucets, et cetera, along with the controls associated with that. Your cooling plant will have dramatically improved water usage associated with that. And we're currently working on designs for a xeriscaping plan, which will use local plantings that require less irrigation and improvements, which will both make the campus more attractive. It also has some environmental additional benefits around pollinators, bees, that type of thing that again could be incorporated into a sustainability curriculum. We're putting in the new district heating system. This will be one of the first items that is able to go in the springtime. We've designed a brand new distribution for your heating network that is based on, again, European standards and is the beginnings of a community scale type of program. So the students that study integrated energy efficiency on campus at Henry Ford will have a state-of-the-art international standard of how heat can be distributed. This also is the beginnings of a framework that could serve a broader Dearborn footprint in the future because it is a district heating ready system. There's a couple of buildings that have been recently updated or more recently updated that there'll be future expansion for. Building J and the Welcome Center component. I know the college is working on strategic planning of what some of those buildings might look like in the future. And so we've included a readiness for those to be a part of the network in our future plans together. And then finally, there'll be a state-of-the-art energy planning center, which includes the classroom and curriculum support for the new energy program and the start of the solar photovoltaics, which will go along adjacent to building E, kind of next to the shop area, that parking there. You could see this is somewhat of a rendering that shows the start of that. And again, the campus has future expansion in the partnership as well, which could go out in the greenfield adjacent to the Welcome Center for additional solar photovoltaics as time moves on. The big part that we were up against is the cash flows. And as John said, this dates back to the very beginning of how ROIs were established. And this shows a $7 million net present value that was originally designed as the target that we would achieve, along with the cash flows that would be a part of the program. Because of the pandemic, we did lose about a year's time. associated with this program. So we're now in getting ready to launch into 2021. And so we're using 2019 and 2020 as a catch up. And we still believe that we could hit these metrics, in fact, improve on them, where the college will see the break-even point ahead of schedule based on the projections that we put together. This is our project management plan. You can see, I'm not going to go through this in detail, but this goes out through the early part of the 2023 fiscal year for Henry Ford College for the bulk of the construction work. Past this time, again, there'll be continuous improvement measures with a Johnson Controls consultant that will be an extension to the Henry Ford College team to help drive additional HVAC improvements, building envelope, solar, that type of thing. And then finally, I have here the cash flow projections in terms of how the construction period spreads out. So again, we're moving up, or moving back, I should say, the initial projected spending from 2019 and 2020 into 2021 to accelerate and get the project moving so that you can see the energy benefit that John had projected in these cash flows that had been presented to you as part of the plan. 2022 is largely the same. And then 2023 has an acceleration from some of the initial 24 plans. Again, that's in order to meet the criteria and see the savings as quickly as possible. This spending is coming out of both the technology project, as well as the bond proceeds that you all had put towards this particular program. And again, we were able to maintain the $23 million budget that we were given initially as a part of this project. And so we see at least the original break-even point, probably even an accelerated opportunity to break even on the cash flow projections with the savings that we think will be delivered. John, I'll pause here. I don't know if you have any comments that you want to make on the cash planning.
You've put it well, Tim. Is what we're pretty much doing is, 2019, 2020 was the initial startup of going forward on this. We even had the tech building in here. That's been delayed somewhat. But if you look at the IEMP and the dollars associated with the IEMP, we were looking at, as I mentioned before, 2020, 2021, 2022, 2023, and even into 2024, those 5 years, fiscal years, as being where the bulk of the money was going to be spent. We've compressed that. We've compressed that into just a little over 2.5 fiscal years instead of the 5. Saying, can we afford to do that? Well, yes, we do have. You see those yellow boxes down there below. That's why we did the borrowing for $13 million to cover us through the high investment in the project in the earlier years. But what it does too is it speeds up the savings associated with it, rather than taking us up to 5 years to get to the maximum. We've compressed that schedule so that we can start those savings and hit those targets in 2023 and 2024, as we had anticipated in the earlier goings of this project. So we lost time, but we're going to be catching it up is what we're going to end up doing.
Exactly.
Thank you. Do we have any questions? Or you're not done with, okay, I'm sorry.
Oh, this is just a closing comment. Again, the strategies around this plan are not just an efficiency, but it is a comprehensive approach to maintaining these targets. Again, we look forward to holding this up as a huge success. We're excited to be your partner. And yeah, I'm happy to take any questions.
And this, of course, you have to put this final slide in. This slide's at least 3 years old. This is one of the slides, if you go back to some of the earlier presentations, that Peter Garforth had put in as we were going through this, as we were doing updates, as we were going into the RFP stages, and finally to the point where we're at today. Question. So at this point, any questions at this time?
Yeah, I have one question.
Yes.
Since we already lost time partly because of the COVID environment, and we're still existing in the COVID constraints. But you're anticipating being able to push this ahead. What's changing in the plans to work around the restrictions that we're existing under for the next several months, more than likely?
Tim, that's probably best, in
Yeah.
terms of supplies and ordering of materials. I don't think that'll have an effect, but go ahead. There's been nothing held up in terms of construction at this juncture. There was back, I believe, in the early parts of March, April, and May, but we're not, knock on wood, we're not seeing that right now. The construction is going forward.
That's right. And what we're seeing right now as a construction industry is when the pandemic wave 1 in March, everything was shut down. I mean, we basically exited the buildings. We weren't able to do a lot of the studies that we initially had planned, and we had to work through that situation. What we're seeing now as an industry is similar to education. We've learned a lot and have been able to figure out ways for crews to be on site, to be doing construction, as long as the state policies allow, which they have. So based on some of the things that we're seeing around the way higher education is operating, there is an opportunity that campus will be largely more empty than we had originally planned, which will allow us to move crews through and do some things even faster than what we had approached before, which is partly what's allowing us to catch up. But also we're doing evening hours and things like that to make sure we're hitting those project schedules. Of course, there's flexibility in here. If the pandemic were to force stricter offsite needs or shutting of campus, we'll be able to adjust and move accordingly. But that's how we've planned it right now.
Yes.
Thank you. Trustee Moses?
Yeah, I had my question about now that the campus is half empty or more than half empty. Do you will have more ample time to work on this project? But I think that was answered. So thanks.
Yes. We have, and we see some really good opportunity to get in and make some headway quickly.
Any other questions?
Yes.
Trustee
I think I might have even asked this at presentations years ago, but educational component as part of where it will feed into. Is it environmental engineering? Is it construction management? Is it? I hope that there will be some lesser levels rather than just a 4 years, some kind of engineering degree.
Oh, yeah.
I hope there'll be some certificate programs that maybe could be of interest in the future for frontliners. I'm not sure who to direct the question to, but this is the type of thing that I think would have been perfect for the Obama stimulus plan years ago. I wish we'd have something like that now. I hope there's going to be some stepping stones for people to gradually work into degrees. So I don't know whether you can speculate on that or whether you've actually had conversations on it even. Maybe with Dr. Nealon, I'm not sure who.
I'd love to comment, and then I can have John and team comment as well. We see this as very much integrating into many of the areas of existing curriculum. So while the big picture goal may be a degree in integrated energy planning, this ties into HVAC, and we're very excited the way that this is laid out, that the HVAC lab is directly adjacent to the new energy center. It is directly adjacent to the new class and lab for integrated efficiency. Ruben and I have been having conversations about staff development, and not just, student and grad and, educating the workforce of the future, but educating the workforce of today, which is a dramatic need. We see that as a industry participant as well. There's a ton of need to educate the workforce that you have that is serving your campus. So we see it building into that. Construction management, and even workshop and outreach and camp style programs around the high school students preparing for college is a place that we plan to go. So there's a lot of places that we see this integrating, and our next step will be to get with Dr. Nealon and the academic leadership and start to build out those components that match up with the technical components that we've been able to design and prepare to get ready.
When we did our visit to Canada, where they are in the midst of doing this at the college college near Brampton, and what they're doing is when Dr. Neal and I were there, they were showing the curriculum that was being developed, 2-year and 4-year curriculum, which is part of this process here, which is why we have the academic side of this, as well as folks at Johnson Control, and as part of the RFP requirement to develop these particular programs. And we could see where they had 4-year programs established, and here's what the classes were associated with this particular degree. Here's a 2-year degree, and so on. That's anticipated to be part of this, and as part of the recommended programs, and as part of the presentation today, and has been talked about for the last 3 years. That is to be worked into this, not just like Tim was saying, not just a let's save money by changing the way in which we utilize energy. It's save money, but also teach our future folks how to actually do this and run with this in the future. So it's always been a 2-part effort of make it efficient, and also what are the programs that we can derive out of this. And that learning lab, that center is by front and center to this whole concept.
Are there any other questions?
Yeah, quick question. With the, we keep talking about this
I
4-year,
might make one last plea to.
Something's lost.
okay, yeah, Mary's having an issue. With the 4-year degree, we need authorization from
Oh,
the
yes.
state.
Yeah, absolutely.
Are we, and we know how long it's taken to even start to approach the nursing baccalaureate. Are we working on that? I mean, because quite frankly, I see it, I'm not certain that we're going to get that kind of approval.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just
John, I think when the legislature authorized 4-year degrees, I think the 4 of them they got were culinary, concrete science, maritime science, and energy. I think, don't quote me on this, Trustee Pelichkov, but I think when the legislature passes, I think that included this. Does anybody on the HFC team know the answer, whether that's my memory's right?
To a degree, I can remember that. I know we'd always been looking at the 2-year portion of this, and then building up on to the 4-year degree. But that's and quite frankly, I don't know where that 4-year degree, the type that we're looking at here, that the one we were looking at in that Canada was putting together, that university is putting together in Canada. I don't see that curriculum anywhere nearby to be of a challenge to any of the 4-year institutions. But again, we've got to go through that process, as Trustee Petlicoff says. But again, it's part of the process. It's part of this game plan to do that and build upon that curriculum. It may take 4 years till you get a 4-year degree. It may take 5 years, but at least the foundation for the 2-year degree and the certificate programs can be addressed up front.
Yeah, the legislation, Dr. Nealon's going to talk here in a minute, but the legislation authorized cement technology, marine technology, energy production technology, and culinary arts.
Okay.
Dr. Nealon, do you remember if the legislature was clear about what they meant when they said energy production technology?
No, it's actually very open. So we're planning on working right within that zone. And as Tim said, everything from basic HVAC all the way through to a new bachelor's degree in this area would be within the purview of our college to offer.
So we should get started sooner rather than later on if we're going to start developing programs, I suspect, to get the approval moving forward to kind of go along in step.
Yep.
What I'm saying, Trustee Pelichkov, is that in 2012, and I'm surprised my memory is actually right about this, the legislature was trying to, the proponents of the act were trying to get community colleges the authority to offer 5 different four-year degrees, and they got 4 of them passed. And it was culinary, cement technology, maritime technology, and energy production technology. So the legislature has already given community colleges the authority to grant these 4-year degrees.
Okay, all right.
Yep.
All right. Okay.
Trustee Lane, do you have a question?
If I make, yeah, I have a comment to Mr. Baker. I appreciate you mentioning some of the green fields that might be used for solar panels. I would just try to plead to anybody who will be involved in that in the future to use land that is like out on Ford Road there rather than land that might have other purposes or other values later on. I'd rather have something out and it land like at the roadside than land that is along the trail, and you get my point, I think.
We get your point.
Yes, I appreciate it. We've been having many conversations about master planning and how solar fits. You're very right, Secretary.
I've got a question.
Or
We've mentioned HVAC a couple of times.
Mhm.
And since we last really talked about this at the end of last year, we've had the pandemic. Has the pandemic changed what we're looking at in this project, whether it's because of HVAC now on the forefront for people? Has anything else really changed in our priorities?
That's a great question. So as we've developed the controls and metering portion of this project, we continue to look at, and the way that I'll describe it is a flexible approach to your facilities. I appreciated the question early on in the meeting about ventilation and what is happening. The control systems per ASHRAE guidelines are, and the college is maintaining appropriate outside air changes. I think sometimes people are surprised when they hear how many air changes are going on in a room that has fixed windows that are closed. But we are standing up the control systems in a way that will have a flexibility to approach. So for example, you might have a pandemic mode as opposed to a normal mode, or you might have a closed mode. What we're trying to do is balance the environmental needs associated with indoor environments associated with the spread of any kind of, whether it be COVID or the flu or whatever, and then being able to give easy tools to adjust appropriately with a mindset towards how do you do that as efficiently as possible. So our industry has been thinking a lot about how do we implement that into the next generation of control solutions. And it is a part of the way we're designing the control solutions in this plan. And it's changed the thinking of that for sure. Another example might be, the campus is closed, and so there's not a lot of air changes going on, but before students return, there might be a 1-hour flush that would not normally be a part of a sequence of operations, but we are building it into these types of programs in order to be able to provide healthy environments in the Henry Ford College buildings. So yes, it's a part of our conversation for sure.
Great, thank you very much. I believe everybody's all set.
All
Good,
right.
Thank you for the update. Appreciate it.
We're welcome.
Thank you, and we appreciate the partnership with you. Look forward to sharing future results.
Sounds good. Madam Secretary, next item, please.
Next items are discussion items, Technology Investment Fund, TIF, Winter 2020 and Fall 2020 proposed projects. Again, it's Vice President Setkowski.
Yes, these projects were put in, were suspended, if you will, last fall. They were reviewed by the TIF committee, approved by the TIF committee. But then when it was coming into implementation and review in the spring, and things unfortunately came to a head in the spring, those 4 projects were delayed. 5 projects, in fact, were delayed. But at this point, these 4, which are already funded and have their TIF funding, have gone through the review process, can be implemented at this juncture. Quite a bit of work was put into the description of these. A number of them can be used off-site, if you will, which is one of the things Kevin Dewey has been dealing with the music and performing arts area. So with the recording arts update. So we're recommending these 4 projects proceed forward.
Any questions? Great, thank you very much. Next item, please, Madam Secretary.
Action items, citizen participation. Are there any action items? Am I at the right place? Yeah. Any action items on the agenda which board members of the president wish to discuss and vote on separately? If there are, we'll exclude these from the motion below. So there's 3 items on there. No takers?
Like it, we can move
Mr.
forward, please,
President?
Madam Secretary.
Okay, move to approve action items numbered 1 through 3 as recommended in this agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Motion moved by Trustee McDonald, supported by Trustee Dr. Mead. Are there any questions on the 3 action items? Hearing none and seeing none, Madam Secretary, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Lane, yes. McDonald,
Yes.
Mead,
Yes.
Mosem,
Yes.
Petchlokoff,
Yes.
Thorpe,
Yes.
Barry.
Yes, thank you. The motion carries.
Chair Barry.
Yes. Thank you. The motion carries. Next item, please.
I think the agenda maybe is confusing me. Did we have citizen participation? I don't see any blue cards.
Oh, I thought you covered that. No? Okay.
Yeah, I thought you
It
did.
was, the agenda is written a bit oddly.
Yeah, it normally there's the verbiage below citizen participation. I didn't see any unless Kathy breaks in right now and corrects me. I did go back and look at the emails. I don't see any, but I think we're usually there's verbiage there. So I'm a little confusing myself, which is pretty easy to do.
Trustee Lane, Secretary Lane, you were fading in and out, so I assumed that you covered it, but shame on me on that. So, Kathy, are you there?
No comments were received.
Okay.
Perfect. Okay, so then we're at Board of Trustees business acknowledgement of correspondence.
Anybody? Next item, please.
Board committee reports.
Trustee Moseb?
Yes, the policy committee met before this meeting with all members attending. And we discussed one item on the agenda, which was Title IX revisions to the policy from the federal government. So I will, give me a second here. Review some of the major changes that we discussed at the meeting, and what the Title IX regulations, which I will warn everybody that these may change on with the new administration, with the new federal administration coming in. So major changes that were discussed obviously were part of requiring the designation of the Title IX coordinators or coordinator to oversee the college process. The prior rules said that this coordinator doesn't involve themselves. I'm sorry, that the current, the prior rules did not define the roles and the responsibilities of the coordinator, but the new regulations does spell them out, and it says that they might not act as an investigator or a fact finder, but rather that they should be as a manager to oversee the process. The new regulations also impose a strict investigation procedures, live hearings, and appeal procedures, and requires the respondent to be permitted to have counsel present. The prior rules did not authorize these active preparations. So it's very lengthy. What I have asked, and all the board trustees will be receiving a report on the two and on this policy. So you will be receiving it, so it could be voted on in the next meeting in December. It is noted that this policy, that the Board of Trustees need to be trained on the policy, on Title IX policy as well. So comes January, all of the Board Trustees will be trained on it as well. And that's it. I think that covered pretty much what we discussed at the meeting, if my other two colleagues don't have anything else to add.
Now, just be aware that because of the degree of changes, what we usually get with a policy change is you get the redlined version of the changes. Well, there were so many changes to this policy due to the federal regulations that what you'll be reading is quite lengthy, quite detailed, and you would have to refer back to the old policy in order to see the changes. So just read the new policy is my suggestion. They couldn't redline it because there was too many changes. It just made it impossible to keep up with it in one document.
Sure. So all of the board members will be receiving this report, extensive report, and you will have to vote on it. I will not be present at the December meeting. We will have to make one way to brief also Trustee-elect D'Ambrosio on this policy as well, since he will be voting on it. And that's it for the policy committee.
Are there any questions for Trustee Moseb? Okay, great, thank you. I think that was it for committee reports, correct? Okay, since we're on committee reports regarding an ad hoc committee, and Kathy, you don't have to take notes here. I will forward you what I'm about to say. It's somewhat lengthy. I am charging an ad hoc committee to develop recommendations to promote the long-term financial health and sustainability of Henry Ford College. The committee's three-pronged charge are: 1, to inventory the physical infrastructure of Henry Ford College; 2, to examine the fixed and variable, short and long-term expenses of Henry Ford College; and 3, to identify new resources, financial resources that can be invested in the college's physical infrastructure. The next two statements, I will be working with Vice Chair Thorpe and the rest of my colleagues, looking for some feedback. The committee is to be co-chaired by a board member, a trustee, and a representative of the administration. most likely will be a 12-member committee, which will include representation from the Board of Trustees, administration, staff, students, and members of the community that the college serves. I will be reaching out to my colleagues to get some feedback, some input about this, and we'll take it from there. And I will be working with President Cavaluna to kind of get the key members of this committee. Are there any questions? Okay, next item, Madam Secretary, please.
Requests for information and or future agenda items.
Okay, seeing none and hearing none, we'll go into the next item, please.
Board member commentary.
Anyone? Okay, Trustee Mosip? You're muted. Kathy, if you want to unmute Trustee Mosip, there you
Oh,
go.
thank you very much. I think I muted myself by accident. I just would like to thank all of the voters who've made their voice heard at the ballot box on November 3rd or prior to that. This year had a record of absentee voters and a record of voters, and that makes me really happy that people are making their voices heard through the ballot box and participating in the democratic process. I'd like to thank all of the voters who have entrusted me to serve another 6 years on this board, and I look forward to working with all of you to advance Henry Ford College as well as our beloved district as well. I'd like to commend all of the candidates who ran an amazing campaign, and they gave it all their power through a pandemic to run such a challenging times. So I'd like once again to thank them, to thank all of the voters, and I look forward to working with all of you.
Great, thank you. Anybody else under comments? Trustee Thorpe?
Want to wish everyone a very safe and happy Thanksgiving next week. Stay safe.
Thank you.
Mask up.
Take your mask off to eat the turkey.
And then put it right back on.
President Cavaluna? You're muted.
I don't call myself a trustee or a board member, but I will take the privilege of making a comment. You did have a member of your board turn 1 year older since our last board meeting, and he looks like the youngest one of you, but you might not realize he's the oldest one of you. And I gave him a shirt that was recommended by the chairs, and I knew he'd love it because it said Henry Ford Community College. So happy birthday, Dr.
Happy
Thank you.
birthday, Dr. Means.
Happy
Thank you.
birthday, Michael.
Birthday.
Thank you. Thank you.
Many more. Okay, anything else? Next item, please.
Future meeting dates. Monday, November 23rd, 2020, P12 study session.
That one was canceled, wasn't it?
Yep.
Yeah,
Good catch, Trustee McDonald.
Thank you. Monday, December 7th, 2020, P12 Board of Education meeting, 7 p.m. at the Administrative Service Center in the Frank Franchi Boardroom. And virtually available live. I think we'll have to be all virtual, won't we? So virtually available live for viewing is mandated by Michigan Senate Bill number 1108. And maybe that's probably not the right citation anymore since the governor spoke yesterday, but via YouTube Live, www.youtube.com/DPSCOMMDEPT. Facebook Live, www.facebook.com/Dearborn Public Schools, and cable channels Comcast Dearborn Channel 19 and WOW Channel 15. Monday, December 14th, 2020, HFC meeting, 7:00 p.m. via Zoom viewing is mandated in Michigan Senate Bill number 1108, now Public Act 228 of 2020. Details to be determined. Check online at www.hfcc.edu, board-meeting-schedule.
Great. Thank you very much, Madam Secretary. We are adjourned. Good night, everybody.
Have a good evening.
Yeah,
Happy
right.
Thanksgiving.
Yeah, to everybody.